I'm here with Jeff Oldham, founder at Informed Consulting, Sharon Bryan, a partner at Informed Consulting, and Anna Torchio at Informed Consulting. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
To start this discussion, I wanted to kind of focus on a brief evolution of employee benefit programs and what are some key themes that you guys have seen evolve with these programs over the last, let's just say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, sure, Michael. If you don't mind, I'll actually back up just a little further because I think one of the biggest changes that's happened in our industry was the advent of healthcare reform in 2011. And my rationale for saying that is that was sort of a defining moment for a lot of self-insured employers to transition to consumer-directed health plans or high-deductible health plans. And so, what that means for the employees, they had to take on more risk. They had to be more, responsible for their pre-deductible spend. And what I noticed at that time is behind the scenes, there was these cottage industries evolving in something called digital health. And what these companies tried to do is actually distribute their product through health plans and employers, but to ensure that their members had the ability to benefit from their products, to pay less, to not avoid care, and things that typically happen, which are not good when members are non-compliant. And so then the next thing I would do is fast forward to the pandemic. And in advance of the pandemic, you had these multitude of industries, everything from behavioral health, MSK, diabetes, cardiovascular, metabolic disease, caregiving. All of these sort of companies were forming. And then what happened with the pandemic is, of course, brick and mortar was closed for quite some time. And so now, if you were a member and you needed care, you actually had to look for digital health as the first alternative. And now fast forward to today, 2023, there are a multitude of different, what people in the industry call point solutions, that are around in various different categories, which we'll talk about in this discussion. But those are sort of the three things that I would look at is healthcare reform put more risk and responsibility on the member. Industries like digital health companies wanted to be able to provide the members with ways of managing their healthcare at home. The pandemic hit, so in many ways that fast forwarded digital health, into the spotlight. And now that we're here in 23, you've just got so many different companies and so many different industries that are out there that in many regards certainly are beneficial to the members, but also it causes brokers, venture capitalist firms, and even CEOs or entrepreneurs to be able to think differently relative to how they market and distribute their products.
There's really been an evolution with, for example, wellness, and COVID, I think, exacerbated it. This real focus on digital health and digital health solutions to provide a lot of services that traditionally were brick and mortar. So recognizing that reducing the friction point really does help with that user engagement. And then there's a real evolution around wellness. I think 5 years ago, we all heard about getting your steps, your vegetables, those types of wellness programs. And it's really changed. And it was so encouraging to see the real big focus on mental health. There's a huge focus on sleep. So just a recognition that these other non-food or movement related things do impact our health, and focusing on that from an employer perspective for the productivity of your workforce.
For Sharon, how has the role of the broker kind of evolved in helping to support these programs over the same time?
In the past, I would say 10 years, there's been a huge focus on how do you utilize technology within that employee benefit package. And brokers initially really had a mindset of they focused on the products that they placed, similar to property and casualty on the commercial side. And there's really an evolution now where there's a recognition that the process, in addition to the products, of how these products are distributed is just as important. So brokers now have national tech consultants that are helping advise them on technology solutions, HCM solutions, Ben admin. They have population health practice leaders that are really focused on all of these digital health solutions. The one thing I think we see the market, or we see the industry moving towards, is how do we pull all these pieces together? So how do we not look at them as a silo? Because really, from an employer's perspective, how they all fit together greatly influences the delivery and the experience for the user.
So getting back to the construction of the employee benefit programs in and of themselves, in 2023, what does an optimized employee benefit program look like from kind of the process, technology, and then kind of product offering standpoint?
It can vary wildly based upon your demographics and industry. And so if you're probably asking yourself, what does that mean? If you have all your employees in one place, like a hospital or a school or what have you, then needless to say, there are certain benefits, and even the proverbial meeting in the cafeteria to discuss benefits and what have you, probably a greater opportunity for those folks that aren't living in SDOH areas or HPSA, health plan shortage areas. So their benefits are going to be constructed very differently than people in transportation or people that don't have access to their brick and mortar physicians. And so the first thing I would look at is what are the demographics of your organization. The secondly, of course, is take a look at over the last couple of years or so, what have been the driving factors in your medical costs. What are those conditions? It's typically the Pareto 80-20 rule, where 20% of folks are driving 80% of the costs, and there's only a handful of conditions that are driving that great percentage. So I'd be cognizant of that. Thirdly, there's, for the first time in American history, 5 generations in the workforce. And so in addition to demographics and actual claims data, you need to look at benefits that are applicable to a very wide range of workers. So when I first started, I won't tell you when, we probably had 5 benefits, medical, dental, life, disability, and 401k. That was it. Thanks for playing. Now, because you've got 5 generations, you have a variety of different things that are occurring, from women that are delaying having children because they have student loan debt, which then delays them buying houses due to the economy, which means they're having children later, which is really brought on the advent of the massive fertility industry, all the way to caregiving, where you have employees that are members of what the industry calls the sandwich generation. They're taking care of their parents and they're taking care of their children. And then you sprinkle in the pandemic with this as well. These are things that need to be managed at home. So I would say there's not like a universal way to say all employers must have these benefits. I would just say an employer should be cognizant of their demographics, their claims, the generations they have in the workforce. And then last but not least, and this may sound really hokey, don't guess. Ask your employees above and beyond sort of healthcare products, what else do they need that would be beneficial to them? Is it forms of financial counseling, offering a 529, things of that nature? Sometimes I find inadvertently in our industry, you have people that will just say, well, I know my population, they're going to want this. And again, with 5 generations and people working in a multitude of different locations for the majority of industries, you can't possibly know what's going on in your employee's life above and beyond healthcare to know what they need. So I wouldn't make the assumption. I would look for any and every opportunity to listen to your employees through surveys and ensure that you're offering benefits that resonate with what they need, because at the end of the day, you've got so many industries that in the war for talent cannot use base salaries as their only mechanism for hiring employees. They have to use the diversity and wealth of their benefits program in order to attract people to work for them. So that's why I think listening to your employees is crucial as well in the development of a good plan.
I have just a few things that I would add to that, and it would be one, as you're thinking about a package, the integration between all of the different solutions that you want to deploy. So, not just looking at what you need individually, but thinking about how it all fits together. The tighter the integration, the better. And that kind of parlays into the other piece is HR and employers really want to be more strategic and have that executive level influence to protect and kind of recruit and retain employees. They want to always be thinking about that ROI case study. So making sure that they're always gathering the data they need to show that return on investment to ensure that not only do you get the programs, but you keep the programs.
Did you want to add anything, Anna?
The only thing that I would add in terms of that integration piece that everyone seems to be looking for when it comes to blending point solutions and all of the programs that kind of Jeff described into a cohesive consumer-esque experience is that I'm not sure it completely exists today in a really accessible way. And I would always encourage employers to be pushing up on their vendors, their technology partners, their broker partners, their health plan partners. Ask for these things. They respond to their client what their clients want. And these are large employers, they're high dollar clients, and they're going to design their product strategy based on the requests that they're getting. So don't forget the power that you have in really pushing up and driving the market towards hopefully developing more consumeristic, more integrated and seamless experiences for their employees.
So, in terms of some of the new innovative offerings for employers, what's the macro thesis kind of around their ability to impact employees? And then, kind of put another way, so what value can they deliver versus maybe some traditional offerings? Some tangible examples I think would be helpful, for that.
Yeah, I hate to keep coming back to the pandemic, but I think it really opened the eyes of a lot of employers and brokers around, the need to be able to provide different forms of benefits above and beyond brick and mortar. Yes, telehealth was alive and well before the pandemic, but I would say the great percentage of Americans didn't try it until the pandemic hit. And now, if you would even suggest that you were going to take it away from them, that wouldn't go over very well. So, and it's interesting with healthcare. I would say it's probably the last industry relative to financial services, obviously retail and what have you, that still relies very heavily on brick and mortar. But the challenge with that is numerous statistics and studies show that there's a shortage of nurses, there's a shortage of physicians, that there aren't enough physicians or will not be in the next 5 to 10 years to actually fill the available MD vacancies in the United States. And so, again, the timing of all of this is really good, but it's also really pragmatic because as other industries have figured out, there's other ways to serve your customers in and outside of brick and mortar. So briefly gave the example of telehealth, but I've done some project work for a caregiving company. And, caregiving is one of those benefits that if you've ever cared for, a loved one, and it takes a team of people to look after them. But when you don't have access to digital tools and what have you, it's incredibly complex to manage, what specialist is my mom seeing on Monday? What meds does she need to take on Tuesday? What were her vitals on Wednesday? Share that amongst your caregiving team. And so these new companies into caregiving, I think, came about or really evolved as a result of the pandemic. And that's just one of numerous other digital health examples, which I'm sure the team is able to share with you around. There was a substantive practical need, and digital health is solving those challenges.
Just personal examples of how how telemedicine has affected me. Just having two small kids, everyone knows that when you have a family or you're growing your family, you are constantly being pulled in multiple directions. It can have a pretty big impact on your ability to perform your job based on those requirements, and maintain your income level. So what telemedicine offers you is really the freedom to access care more quickly and more efficiently. My daughter had pink eye just last Thursday. And before I would even be able to have gotten into my doctor's office, I had already contacted our telemedicine provider, and we had a prescription called in within 90 minutes. And all they had to do was a visual exam of her on the computer, and they checked the box. So, I mean, that probably saved me 3 hours of time, not to mention the headache of pulling her out of daycare and then getting her back to daycare, which just allows me to maintain a routine and keep my family healthy for lower cost.
Where can employers improve in their understanding of these solutions so that they can be introduced into programs and positively impact employees?
I would say the majority of national brokerage and consulting firms now have digital health practices. And so they have people that are constantly, responsible for looking at the market to determine, which companies and products and services would align best with their customers. The second place, of course, is actually, interestingly enough, through your health plan or PBM. Most of them now have established defined ecosystems for either digital health or digital therapeutics, to be able to offer these programs in the context of their existing health plan arrangement. The third, I would say, is there's a variety of different conferences that are solely focused on digital health. And so there's tons of resources, needless to say, publications and what have you. And so employers don't have to look at this as if they're managing on their own. You've got a lot of different experts, including our day job, relative to constantly looking out at new and emerging technologies to see, what can help employers in our country. So it's not a burden you have to take on by yourself.
If you wanted to follow with that, Sharon, on the role that the brokers kind of play in this process, and what opportunity is there for them to provide greater value to their clients in any way?
Brokers always, when it comes to managing self-funded medical plans, they're always looking at claims. So I really think you want to come back to your claims and your claim reporting being your North Star. So thinking about every group is different, and there's a ton of ton of different digital health solutions that might be great for one group, but may not be a top priority for yours based on that claim information. So again, going back to being strategic and really providing a value.
Quickly, kind of on the flip side of that would be, what are some of you guys are working with, point solution providers, some of these innovative solutions, these new digital health solutions. So what are some of the key challenges those solutions face when trying to find their way into the employer offerings?
I think a lot of what we see is the development of a solution that is great for anybody. I mean, anybody would love to have a virtual dermatologist or access to telemedicine across any of their healthcare needs, which is great. But when you think about who you're initially selling to, which is the employer total rewards team, those bin admins, these entrepreneurs don't necessarily have the experience or the insight into what their day-to-day is like. What is their life like every day? What are they thinking about? What are you selling to them? Is what you're selling going to put a lot of work on their shoulders? Do you have ROI data so they don't have to come up with it on their own? How are you going to disseminate it to their employees? Is it in a channel that is existing today? Do they even have email addresses on file? What are the impacts from a data integration perspective? All of these things this is how the employer buyers are thinking. And I think the entrepreneurs don't necessarily have access into what they are really assessing and all of the minute details that go into to them being able to approve and then pitching it to their leadership to also approve from a security, budget, legal perspective moving forward. So I would definitely encourage entrepreneurs in this space to take the time to maybe interview some total rewards professionals or bin admins and really put yourself in their shoes, and that'll help you be a much stronger seller in this space.
Well, we've reached the end of our discussion here, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for everybody's time.